you'll state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
State law gives city council members great leeway to do and pass laws that they want. If this city council really wanted to save money, they could make a motion to go to mediation, and the outcome of the mediation, if they don't like it, then they can schedule a 312. There is nothing illegal about doing that. City councils have the right to enact laws, and if they can even enact a law that goes against the attorney's advice, and it's a law. The only thing, if somebody doesn't like it, they have to go to district court, and a judge can rule that that law is unenforceable. But the city council has the right, and you can make a motion right now. I'd like to see Mr. Hody really stand up and make a motion to go to mediation. Let's be brave and finally do something. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Stevens. And again, if you'll state your name and address for the record, and then you have 3 minutes.
Cool. My name is Josh Stevens, and I live in the Forest Oaks neighborhood. So I'm going to cut right to the chase. Mediation is, it's kind of like, it's where you have what do you want and what do they want, and you come to the middle and you find where you can meet up and match things. And from what we've all seen, 90% of the citizens are very well aware that 4 out of 5 people on this council, they don't care about coming to the middle. They don't care because it's all about what they want. And so what is the purpose of mediation if you're unwilling to come to the middle? There's no purpose for it. So I'm fairly confident that this council is not going to vote to move through some mediation process. The other reason that I'm actually opposed to mediation, and it's because mediation is for, with regards to the 312 process, it's for when somebody actually does something wrong. And in this case, we have Will Bradshaw, who has essentially 2 allegations against him. That he engaged in constitutionally protected speech when he was seeing Olin Yarnell be arrested, and he was aggravated about it. And then the police chief came and wrote a whiny complaint to the city manager. So that's the first complaint, constitutionally protected speech. And the second complaint is that he donated to Olin Yarnell's legal fund, which there's case law that I've actually sent the city manager. The Supreme Court case that reinforces that politicians can give to whatever they want, whenever they want, whatever they want. And so I'm strongly opposed to anything because there's nothing wrong with what Mr. Bradshaw did. And I think that I say 90% of the citizens, I really think that a huge majority of the citizens that take the time to get engaged and see what's going on can see right through this. I don't expect this council is ever going to attempt mediation because I think their mind is already made up, just like it was with Mr. Martinez's hearing. But I do expect that, it's going to be a different course other than Mr. Martinez's. And I'll just tell you, karma's rough. Like in things like this, you aren't going to be elected again. The citizens are going to become aware of what's going on, and ultimately democracy will prevail.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes. Ms. Garrett. And if you'll state your name where you live, please, for the record.
John Garrett. And mediation would be nice, but like the gentleman said, 4 against 1. I didn't see Hody, I didn't see Rodriguez even ever second a motion, anything Will ever did. Will has worked real hard for the citizens of Leon Valley, and then we have someone that sits there with their mouth closed most of the time, and then we have one that says, I second the motion that's somewhere in this cloud here. And Hody, I wish just one time you would stand up and say, I second the motion. You let 2 people rule Leon Valley. And I don't think most of the citizens in Leon Valley realize what Olin Yordell was arrested for. And I think you all know. Does the officer want to say anything now?
Excuse me,
He touched
excuse me,
her
we
arm.
need to just keep it on this subject, which is
Okay.
mediation, please.
Well, mediation,
Mhm.
but I don't think Will will get it. And I don't want to spend the money on 312. I don't think any of the citizens do. And they need to get out the cell because Arnell only touched her arm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I
I
appreciate
hope
it.
she goes to jail.
Okay,
Mayor, personal touch, please.
okay. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Blackmore. And if you'll state your
Richard
name.
Blackmore, I live down the street from that gentleman up over there in Leon Valley. The gentleman that was arrested probably makes more money in 1 month than most of these people make in 6 months. His fine was probably $100. All you have to do is pay 10%. It's really a shame it's come to this, Mayor. I strongly feel, you have a lot to do with this. You haven't spoken to Mr. Bradshaw, does all your speaking for you. But this all could have been ended 2 years ago, if you'd done the right things then. The problem we have with 312 hearings, I believe in negotiations, mediation, whatever you want to. But staff doesn't have that luxury. If they start a petition and they get involved in the politics, they will get fired. Under the city charter, under the old system. They can't do that. Can't do that at all. So if they have a complaint, they take it up to their supervisors. Their supervisors takes it up to the city manager. The city manager takes it up with the mayor.
It just needs to be mediation, that's the topic. I've been trying to get everybody to stay on the topic, please, sir. Thank you.
What I'm saying is, if you're taking the time to mediate and talk to the previous gentleman that was on the council, all he had to do was apologize, and we wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't have all these people in here today if you'd done your job.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one, then I will bring it back to the city council. Do you have any comments or question or a motion? Okay, I don't see the people that are at home that want to speak. Mr. Hodey, did you want to speak? And Ms. Rodriguez, did you want to speak? Yes. Ms. Rodriguez, did you have anything to say?
I do.
And that's Crystal.
Oh, it's not.
Who's
It's
the-
Alcocer.
Okay. Counselor Alcacer, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you. I just find it interesting that there's a lot of political innuendo stuck in between. We got gratuitous extra time, is that the presumption that Ms. Charles and I are gone? Because we are actually in our second year of our term. We didn't get any gratuitous time. Secondly, I find it very interesting that you walked around collecting signatures simply because we did our job, so that we would be recalled with under a charter that you don't like at all.
Excuse me, this is about mediation, please.
This is one of the points you brought up, ma'am, and I'm responding to them. You didn't say anything about mediation before you went out walking about a recall, and now you want mediation And at this point, when you haven't explained that mediation is a private thing, it is not a public, forum, the people have to be bound by the mediation, they can't talk about what happens in the mediation, and each party has to accept it, and when you have multiple parties with different situations, it's very difficult to accomplish, and if you have a party that says, I do no wrong and you're wrong and I'm right, there's not much to mediate, and when you think you don't like the charter and this should be gone and these counselors should be gone, there's nothing to mediate. You have to have a purpose for mediation. It is a good tool under the right circumstances. But it's something that should be considered in a charter instead of having a charter go away. And I tend to concur with, if you had, with Mr. Blackmore, that if there were many, many attempts at mediation with Mr. Martinez, and you were the mediator, and none of them worked. So
Okay, let me
this
just
is
clarify
not
on the mediation. A mediation
program.
is non-binding, it's arbitration that's binding, and the positiveness
It's
of
binding on
the,
the parties not to talk about what happens, and you don't get public input that everybody at least those present there, seem to want to have, and the people who are participating in it can't talk about it. And how is that going to be enforced with the group that we have there? It's like, it's a person coming up and speaking, we have a mandatory mask, and that person is able to take off the mask and nobody says anything? I think that's wrong. Should we mediate that?
okay,
But anyway, I think we have to be consistent all along, and if we have a mediation when something comes up, but when you have a counselor who won't even talk to anybody, because one time it happened, and then he comes to the council and says, you're right and I'm wrong. He was asked at the last meeting, do you think anything? Do you have anything? No, I was perfectly right, and this shouldn't be done. So how can you mediate that, Mayor?
okay, thank you for those comments. Anyone else? Mr. Hody, did you have anything? If not, then I'll move to Mr. Bradshaw. Did you? No comments? Okay.
Yeah, let me
Okay,
say something.
go ahead.
We couldn't meet as a council as a whole when I first was appointed to this position. Because two members of the council did not want to do that because of the current, at that time, situation, whatever that was. That was the reason. I would be all for talking things over, but you and Councilor Bradshaw have been unwilling to do that at a council retreat where we could talk about different things. We could have talked about what happened in the 312 hearing with Mr. Martinez and what we agree or disagree on. We've got an ethics ordinance, and I would say that if maybe we didn't do things incorrectly to begin with, there wouldn't be a need for mediation, let alone 312. So I have a hard time believing that anything can be accomplished with a mediation based on what has happened in the past. Why are there all these lawsuits? That's not helping anything. Why didn't you, and I'm not blaming you, ma'am, don't get me wrong, but why didn't you go to a certain individual or certain individuals and talk to them. It's like what I had mentioned to Councilor Bradshaw earlier. You know, let's figure this out. But mediation, I just don't know at this point. Why, if you do something wrong, you gotta be held accountable for it. And whether, you know, and that's through a 312, that's the way that our rules are set up.
Okay. I think I was advocating that we just put everything on hold until after the election, giving the citizens the voice. That's what I was advocating on the mediation. As far as the retreat, I think I had conflicts in the first couple of days, and I don't know what happened after that. But it's not that I didn't want to have the retreat. I've been to every retreat, and I think they're very, very valuable. And I regret that we weren't able to have one, that's for sure. Okay, Councilor Bradshaw.
Thank you, Mayor. I do appreciate the sentiment of trying to resolve the issues besides just jumping to a 312. The idea of mediation. I appreciate all of the citizens' comments on this topic. But one in particular, I tend to take notes of what citizens say during their, citizens to be heard, if there's something I need to follow up on, et cetera. But just what Mr. Janicek said, rise above, be professional. It looks bad for the city, it's unethical, and then you can do the right thing. I just think those are all spot on comments. And, I don't know if a mediation is the answer, if it would work. Honestly, I think Mr. Janicek could be the mediator at this point and try and help us to get through some of this stuff. But it just seems that, Mr. Hodey said it himself, when you've done something wrong, you already get held accountable. So we're gonna do a 312 hearing, and he already said that I've done something wrong. So, we're gonna do a hearing, we're gonna have a jury, the jury's already decided I've done something wrong. So how can I have a hearing, how can we go through the process when the decision's already made, the mind's already made up? That's the problem with the 312 process, in my opinion.
Okay, all right. Did you want to have a response?
I
Yes,
did not
Mr. Hodey.
say that, I don't believe I did. Rewind the tape that Councilor Bradshaw did anything wrong. You, us, all of us as a group is what I mean, any one of the individuals here. So if I misspoke to make it sound like it was you, that's not my intention. That's not the way I operate, and you know that.
Thank you. All right. All right. If there's no other discussion or any, is there any other, I can't make a motion, so.
I do have a discussion.
You have a question?
Yes.
Or a comment on the mediation? Go ahead, please. Catherine, Councilor Rodriguez is recognized.
Many times I've questioned the whole process of 312, and if an apology would have made things better, would have resolved. I'm sure at some point it would have. There is a lot of burning of the bridge at this point, which some of the citizens have said. And then we're harping on this rise above. Whether individuals choose to believe it or not, I've risen above. Right now, I had a citizen come and make an ugly statement against me. The one that was here earlier made an ugly statement against me. Nowhere have I been inappropriate to anybody, said anything ugly, posted anything ugly, posted vile lies and threats. And most recently, discussion of my personal life, that I'm very free-loving. I would love proof to that. If you're gonna say something about me, at least make it truthful.
Okay.
Don't make it colorful. If you wanna hate me and disparage me, that's fine. But don't sign up people to your cause. Because I can tell you, not one of you.
Point of order,
Yeah,
Mayor.
I was going to say it needs to be on mediation.
Okay.
Please. Thank you. I know you're upset about what you read and everything, and I would be too.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
So I'll make a motion that we hire a mediator to discuss the complaints for all three pending 312 allegations against Councilor Charles, against yourself, Mayor, and against me.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'd like to change that or add addendum, whatever the terminology is to that. And instead of having a mediation for those three items that Councilor Bradshaw mentioned, that we meet as a city council, which is what I wanted to do from day one, and have a mediator there, such as the nice lady from out at UTSA, I think, just so that we can talk about things that are going on within the council. That's what, maybe I've completely changed his, but that's, I'm not seconding it, that's what I'm recommending, or that's my changes.
I think that's a different motion altogether.
Okay. Is that, before we go forth with the 312 hearing, or any 312 hearings, is that what your motion would include?
Yes, that's what it would include, and I'm sorry, you're right, I did completely, that was just a completely separate motion, so that's my motion.
All right. So,
I would second Mr. Hody's motion, but not Mr. Bradshaw's.
Mayor, just a quick point of order. There's only been one 312 that has been approved. And so you only have one 312 that if the other two are being investigated. They've not been approved for a 312 yet. So she needs it clarified. You can say the 312 and the two impending investigations that haven't come back yet. But all three, you don't have three 312s already approved yet.
I only knew of the one, and then the investigation under the 312 procedures for the mayor. Is
And
that not
Charles.
what it was called?
and Ms. Charles, we both are being
I didn't have one
investigated.
on Ms. Charles. I know that she had offered to have she offered for y'all to have one, but I didn't know there was a motion for that.
Well,
That was her motion.
The investigating attorney
There
has told me that we're both being investigated.
Okay.
Is what he told me last week when I interviewed with him, so.
But they were actual 312, but I thought it was an investigation under
Well,
the 312
just
procedures.
an investigation, but I'm not sure where that's gonna lead, whatever.
So does that need to be in the motion, or?
Well, let's see, you wanna try to craft that motion again? Mr. Bradshaw, do you wanna withdraw your motion and work with Mr. Hody on this one, or there is a second, so see what we can craft?
I would just say my motion failed, Mayor.
Oh, okay, your motion failed. Yes, sir, go ahead.
So my motion is to meet as a council with a moderator so that we can discuss the fissure in the council. And hopefully out of that, something good will come out of that, or at least we'll have a better understanding. That's not part of the motion, it's just my thoughts.
Okay, but it's just the council and the moderator to talk about the fissure in the council prior to calling for a 312 hearing? Or no? I mean, the thing is, that was I agree with you. I mean, I'd rather talk than spend the money to move forth with a 312 hearing, but it's not my place to say.
Don't think we can take that action under this, or can we, Mr. Zek?
Well, it says a pre-312 hearing process, so I think Mr. Zach.
Well, it's totally unrelated to, what Mr. Hody is saying is totally unrelated to this item, I think.
Yeah, it's not completely,
it isn't completely related. This is a discussion and action item about using mediation as a pre-312 hearing.
Mhm.
And it sounds like what Councilman Hody is requesting is a you know, that would get a mediation for the entire council for purposes of just coming together as a council. So I don't think you can like approve anybody tonight, but I think general direction would be okay without final action with respect to bringing back somebody for final consideration at another meeting. Does that make sense?
Mr. Hody?
You switched to the word moderator versus mediator, and there's a big distinction.
Yes, ma'am, I understand that, but I don't think that giving direction to staff to bring back some moderators for consideration of final action would be a violation of the act based on my knowledge of any of the case law associated with this issue. In other words, you're not taking any final action on anything, you're just giving direction to staff to bring something back for final action.
Right, but my point was, does the direction go toward a mediator or a moderator, Mr. Holt?
Oh, thank you, ma'am. Yes, good question.
Drop the moderator and leave it at mediator.
And I'm okay with moderator too, and quite honestly, those terms, based on what you guys are talking about doing, are probably interchangeable.
But I think moderator and mediator have different roles and different, you know what I'm saying? I mean, a mediator is definitely trained. I mean, it's trained to resolve differences. I don't know about a moderator per se, but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, but I guess a mediator can be a good moderator at the same time.
That's true. They gotta have a lot of good skills, don't they? Yeah. Okay. So, what I heard you say, Mr. Zek, is you could generally give, and who would explore the mediators?
Yes, ma'am, I think that you could even have a motion to ask staff to bring back moderators, mediators, call them what you want, for the purposes of described by Mr. Hody, and staff can then bring that back, and then you can take final action at the next meeting, with it posted, differently, to take any final action you want to take on the issue.
Okay. Is that acceptable to you? So, I have a motion by Counselor Hody and a second by Counselor Alcacer, to set, well, actually, just to direct staff to bring back a mediator, moderator, to explore, working with council on the fissure that exists among us, I guess is what I'd say. Is that
Right, and fast.
okay? And fast, okay. All right. Any further discussion?
Yes,
Counselor Charles?
I just want to know, during this session, will there be a prepared agenda, or is it gonna be free-flowing, or what?
I would prefer that we not get into those discussions regarding how the process would occur. I think that can happen at the next meeting, because this
Okay.
agenda item really is more limited to the 312 issues.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So, does that answer your question, Counselor Charles? All right.
Yes, it
So
did.
let's vote. Ms. Pusley, let's just call the roll, because it's too hard to say who said yes and no, so if we have any no's. Go ahead.
Counselor Charles?
Yes,
Counselor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Counselor Alcacer?
Yes,
Counselor Hody?
Yes.
And Counselor Bradshaw?
Yes.
All right, the motion passes, 5 ayes and no nays. Okay, thank you, I really appreciate that. All right, so then we move to citizens be heard. We added that at the top of the hour. And so if there's anyone here, I know Mr. Jacek, you wanted to speak on citizens to be heard, you had called me. So, you have up to 3 minutes.
All right,
You
well,
bet.
10 seconds, thanks, Chairman. You know, first off, I want to just applaud City Council. You know, I think you're doing the right thing. You know, Another thing, I can't apologize on behalf of citizens or whatever, but I just want to say, it's not right when citizens, and there's a number of citizens that are guilty of this, attacking city council. It's a tough job. I mean, I wish I could see opposite of Charlie. I keep looking up to see him like I'm not seeing him. They're not there. But I applaud. I know it's not an easy thing to do. And so when you're attacked, I think, unfortunately, our emotions get the best of us a lot of times. But once we start attacking people and we start using words and we start cursing or doing that, understand that diminishes your argument. It makes you look less intelligent and bad. So I hope that city council is rising up to another level. I hope the citizens can do the same. Yes, there are questions that we have going on in the city, and yes, maybe we're not getting everything that we want, but I think this shows that I think that we're moving in the right direction. And I think as a city, hopefully, we can come together and start healing and being, the community that I think everybody really wants us to be. I know that's what I want. And being a citizen here for the last 20 years, I don't really have anything bad to say, other than what I've seen over the last couple of months. This is not the direction that I want to see our city going in. This infighting and division, I don't think it's who we are. I always think of Leon Valley as being this, kind of like this nice little community. I feel safe, I feel represented, I feel, heard. And so I just hope that going forward, the citizens and city council can all, and the mayor, we can all just, be that model that we want to be, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? Yes, Mr. Martinez. And you're,
Benny Martinez Seneca.
yeah.
When I was on council, we had, I believe, I can't remember the workshop, but we had a person that was an expert on Robert's Rules of Order and gave us a class on what proper way to interpret Robert's Rules of Order. Twice tonight, it's been violated. We were taught when a motion is made, the next person that speaks seconds that motion, even if they mess up. And I got a question. That's the second. That seconds the motion. That's why in previous council meetings, Mr. Bradshaw has made a motion, and there's been silence until the mayor speaks, and she's the head of the council. She can say, due to a lack of a second, this motion fails. She's the only person that can speak. Twice tonight, this has happened. Will made a motion tonight. Mr. Hody made a motion. He just seconded Will's motion. Please follow Robert's Rules of Order and get it straight. Twice tonight, you violated Robert's Rules of Order.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Stevens.
Josh Stevens from Forest Oaks neighborhood. So I actually wanted to address something from earlier in the council meeting that I was not allowed to respond to, and that was to Chief Salvaggio when he came up for the first agenda item and put on a performance in which he lied about, at least myself, I don't know, probably others too, but he said that we had reached out to the district attorney's office, the Texas AG, the Texas Rangers, all to investigate the first agenda item related to abuse of power, official oppression, and financial crimes. And that's not true at all. If you'd like me to, I definitely will take the time to do that, but I haven't. So if they've been investigating you already, that's not something I spurred. That's something they probably figured out on their own. So, but it goes into a trend, and it's a trend of lying. And so last council meeting, towards the end, Mr. Bradshaw brought up the fact that we, not too long ago, hired a Leon Valley police officer that stood on somebody's neck. So So anybody from home can go to changeleonvalley.com/fired from SAPD, and you'll see all of the suspension documents from the officers that were terminated from San Antonio Police Department that Leon Valley later, or recently hired, really. And so I'm going to read a little part from the suspension paperwork. On or about April 24th, 2015, officers responded to 208 Roseboro Street for disturbance. Mr. Lionel Flores was taken into custody and placed into a marked patrol vehicle. Mr. Flores kicked the door window while in the back of the patrol vehicle, causing damage. In the process of removing Mr. Flores from the vehicle, Officer Elizabeth J. Montoya kicked Mr. Flores in the stomach area while he was still handcuffed and lying on the ground. Shortly afterward, Officer Montoya is observed putting her right foot onto Mr. Flores' neck area. Officer Montoya's actions brought reproach and discredit to both the department and herself. And then if you're looking at the document at home, you'll see her signature is actually about 2.5 inches below that, where she signed her indefinite suspension paperwork. Well, shortly after, Leon Valley City hired this officer, and this was only one of a series of incidents regarding her. So I, as a resident, I'm concerned that we're hiring bad cops. And I've gotten to know, just through the series of events, some really great officers that have come and responded to my house recently. And they apprehended somebody that should have been apprehended. And I was, everything about that was so awesome, and they were professional, and everything was excellent. But I'm concerned that we have a pattern of hiring bad cops. And it's almost to the point, like when I was coming in today, I was trying to look for the sign that said, "Fired from SAPD, ? Apply here." Like, we shouldn't be in the business of hiring bad cops. I don't know why that's acceptable. I don't think any resident should be okay with that. But I certainly hope that these cops are no longer with us. I don't, obviously that's not my authority to make those decisions, but as a resident, I don't want to be funding somebody's salary that has a track record of multiple violations, including standing on somebody's neck, which is very clearly written in the suspension paperwork.
Yes, sir, your 3 months are up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, Crystal just raised her hand. No, sir, not right now. Let's just get from the citizens, and then you can talk to Mr. Stevens later. Yes, Mr. Butler, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Council. And, I might actually save some time for the chief, what I'm going to say. It brought great concern that as someone who was the coordinator of an event wouldn't be able to assuage certain apprehensions from individuals who both happily agreed to and declined under hostile situations. An event I was willing to host at the city's co-sponsoring a bid for the upcoming debate. I wouldn't have spoke about this until later on tonight, but with some facts that should come to light, the individuals who have been outspoken against the citizens hosting a debate for the upcoming candidates for office have continuously brought forth questionable statements. We don't pay for the questionable officers hired here in Leon Valley. They are reserve officers. They barely even hold the Leon Valley Police badge, much less anything else. I've never seen any of these faces. So I'm not concerned about these questionable officers being here. It's about covering up the behavior of censorship and active initiative to be unethical in attempting to be part of a debate process in which you yourself would be active in participating in, which is against state law in Texas, as such. It is censorship by elected officials who want transparency and will delete people's comments who bring forth the truth, like the voters voted in the charter. They understood what the 312 process was. We voted to prove that 312 process and its inaction in the event that when a representative would not resign, the last resort was to remove them by self-policing yourselves. If we, the citizens, voted that in, we voted y'all to be smart enough to use it and to delete such commentary for others to be informed about. To disregard that to yourselves is disheartening to us voters, because we will continue to push for the facts. We will continue to do that on behalf of those who cannot speak for themselves, who are afraid to speak for themselves, and in some cases, their positions prevent them from doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Mr. William, I've also got several letters that I needed to read as well. I'm not sure if you've gotten any for citizens to be heard. Okay, and Mr. Bradshaw. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. There were some comments made earlier that I'd say are not false. So regarding reaching out to the Attorney General's office and the Bexar County District Attorney, which I have on numerous occasions. I'm confident that there's currently complaints pending, and multiple times when those complaints were filed. And in this case, how these complaint processes works, it's not an actual fact-finding investigation. The Attorney General's office must accept whatever is given before it, just like when the city secretary or whoever asks for an Attorney General opinion. They can hide half of the documents or say whatever they want. The Attorney General just has whatever is before it on his table. Nevertheless, multiple of the complaints, in fact, I'm pretty sure all of the complaints that I have submitted against the city administration to the Attorney General came back with the Attorney General determining that the city administrators violated the law. That's not me saying that the city messes up open records requests and doesn't do it right, and that I'm just complaining that I don't like, that's the state Attorney General has determined that indeed the city violated the law. I'll print them out and read them next time if needed. Moving on. Earlier when we were driving in, it's quite a drive for me to get over here to this meeting, but I do it because I care about what I see when people are arrested out here. And I would like to, I do appreciate the fire department for being out here tonight, help with our safety, and everyone, members of the public who have, and even counselors who are documenting, making sure people are kept safe. I really do appreciate that. We called the city manager who left, and I do appreciate, Chief Sabladio, when you're here, that you do pay attention to us as we're speaking. I really do appreciate it. That means a lot to me, that you're actually listening, because as assistant city manager, maybe someday city manager, you are in control of the city, so at least someone who listens is attentive. I appreciate that. The city manager wasn't available. Police Chief Sabladio, you were unavailable. Assistant Police Chief David Gonzalez couldn't pick up the phone. Lieutenant David Anderson, he was out here in the hall earlier, couldn't be bothered. The police sergeants wouldn't answer their phone. Finally, Fire Chief Naughton talked to us while he was just driving around and talked to us for quite some time. And we appreciated that someone, at least at the city administration, seemed to be at work and would actually take a call, because John Gray's out here, you've probably heard him the whole time. He still doesn't know why he can't be in here to speak to the council and ask questions, perhaps of the city administration. With these open records requests, the new game is that the city staff is putting passwords on the documents and printing them out, putting watermarks on. I guess they print them out, scan them in, put a watermark, print them out again, scan them in, and an immense amount of time wasted. Mayor, I just wish that this could be cleaned up, and thank you for...
Thank you very much. Your time is up. All right.
Thank you.
Anyone else on citizens to be heard in the chambers? Okay. Mr. Bradshaw, you want to go ahead and read? Did you have some?
Yeah.
And I believe Ms. Paslow, you said you didn't get any letters. I got one from last time and then two extras. Go ahead.
Okay, the first was from Hilda Gomez in Forest Oaks. She says, "Good evening, city council members and mayor. My letter is about getting transparency and accountability from our elected officials and staff. Police abuse and reform are a national focus. So too, for Leon Valley, is getting clarity on police policies. During the July 7th city council meeting, Mayor Riley developed questions aimed at understanding what the police policies and procedures are for Leon Valley in processing a felony misdemeanor arrest warrant. Charlie Zeck, a legal consultant, clarified the appropriate questions regarding police policies and were agreed upon for general discussion. The mayor asked the first question: does the city of Leon Valley have a policy for allowing an individual accused of a misdemeanor to self-surrender? The police chief's response shockingly turned into an 8-minute tirade that would meet, by most definitions, insubordination. Instead of answering the police policy question, the chief responded in a disrespectful and argumentative tone. We should not be having these conversations publicly about a person that's been arrested. I have had these discussions multiple times about you getting involved in police matters. There's a quote. Then the mayor made several attempts to get the chief to answer the first question, but the chief said the questions were attacks. Quote, these aren't questions, these aren't legitimate questions. Yes, they are attacks. I advised you about this in October 2017. I told you you're way outside your role as a policymaker and that you involving could easily evolve into abuse of office, unquote. The chief went on to assert, quote, instead of heeding my expert advice and your attorney said that this is not appropriate, here we are again almost 2 years later going through the same nonsense. Councilman Bradshaw intervened stating, Chief continues to be off topic and by definition of this council, I believe is personally attacking you and your team of citizens. The mayor said to the chief, I have felt that you are either personally attacking me or bullying me, but the chief was not through. I can tell you in 33 years of police work, I've never, ever, ever been in front of a mayor trying to explain our arrest. Also evident was a total inaction by any other council member to intercede and stop the hostility. The same silent council members have also voted to have the chief of police with no noted experience as a city manager be the interim city manager, including a pay raise starting at the end of September 2020. Now it's up to the citizens of Leon Valley. The November elections give the citizens of Leon Valley a clear voice on bringing back accountability and ending the abuse of power. Vote yes on the recall ballot of both the city council members and no on all amendments to the home rule charter. Hilda Gomez. Okay, and I have another one from Tina Chesan. Mr. Bradshaw, please read this during Citizens Be Heard. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and councilors. I am writing in today to inform everyone of my total disbelief of what was so blatantly shown at the last August 4th City Council meeting. I have viewed numerous times in the past how the city manager interjected herself unsolicited into our council meetings. August 4th, I witnessed Ms. Kinsler rise up from her chair to get the attention and the ear of Captain Rodriguez. You can see this on the video from that evening. She clearly mouthed the words, point of order, followed by more of what I can only imagine was her reaction for that call, or for her reason for that call. As the words came from her mouth to Catherine's ear, Catherine then turned on her mic and said, point of order. This cannot be allowed. She should have no input in controlling what and when a councilor speaks. We have 5 city councilors and a mayor, not 6. She neither ran nor did I vote for Ms. Kinsler to represent me or our on our city council. She doesn't even reside in our city. It is disturbing and I'm outraged that the city manager has taken it upon herself to have total control over our city and over our duly elected councilors. I wish that the city manager, if she must be seated in council chambers, to be seated far away from the councilors to make sure that she does not text them her wishes from wherever she is seated. I also wish to make a note of the time change that was slipped in of the council meetings to be held at 5:15, a poll taken on next door, and also what was discussed at previous council meetings where it was agreed to keep it at 6 o'clock. So how did the 5:15 starting time get snuck into action? I know I have no idea, so please can you, Ms. Kinsler, explain? And please don't use the long previous council meetings as an excuse, as there to be no further items open after 9:45 p.m. Respectfully, Tina Chesa. And then one more short one. This is from Kimberly Bull, and she says, hello, I just wanted to find out from the city council if there's a sign ordinance that prevents people in a household from putting out political signs of who they support, even if the people in the household support different political candidates. I also want to say that I would like to see everyone on city council, the Change Leon Valley Project, and us citizens come together to find solutions to make Leon Valley better, and let's stop this pettiness of blaming one or the other for whatever reasons they may have. we should all start coming together and finding solutions to move forward in making Leon Valley a better place, a better city than what it has been in recent years. Sincerely, Kimberly Bull, Forest Oaks, Counterville.
Yes, I've got that one here. These two that I'm reading were from the last city council meeting that I was not able to read. Yes, sir, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I was juggling earlier and I couldn't raise my hand just promptly,
Okay,
so.
You wanted to speak?
Yes, ma'am.
That citizens be heard? Okay, go ahead, before I read these, go ahead and you'll state your name and.
Thank
where
you,
reside,
Mayor.
please.
I'm Andrew Morgan from San Marcos.
Okay,
I'm also Political Trans Tribune, independent media on YouTube. While sitting back there, I found under the rug a topic that needs to be revisited. So I just want to bring it up to revisit it so it doesn't die under the rug. And that's the topic of the Leon Valley Library not catering to homeless people, as if general delivery doesn't exist. And the homeless people of the planet have a right to access literature. So there's a Miss Regina, I believe, head of the Leon Valley Library, that said that their policy came from the city council to require permanent addresses for a library card. At some time ASAP, I would like to see that brought up as an agenda and get it taken care of. We, the people, would like to have our homeless people access literature. Maybe they can read something and learn something and help them get off the streets. Thank you.
I'm sorry, sir, can you repeat your name? Andrew?
Say again?
I had Andrew Morgan.
Morgan.
Is that correct? From San Marcos?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, that's what I wrote. Okay, again, this one and the next one is from actually August the 4th. We weren't able to get to it. And it says, please read, when discussing Councilor Bradshaw on August the 4th, I'm a resident of Leon Valley on Evers Road. I am afraid of Chief Savaggio, so I don't wish to share my personal information. I am afraid he will retaliate against myself and my family. Before we go down the expensive rabbit hole with taxpayer money and trying to remove yet another counselor without the people's input, please tell myself and this board what charter rule Mr. Bradshaw violated. If a charter rule violates the Constitution, specifically the First Amendment, what should charter rule be, quote, on the books? What if that charter rule violated your Second Amendment? Signed, a scared Leon Valley citizen, but there isn't a name, so I will keep that for Sandra. This also came in last meeting. Michelle Viejo, who was here this evening, that lives in Seneca. It says, Dear Mayor Riley, Justin and I submitted the following ethics violation complaint to the city of Leon Valley, as well as to be read during Citizens to be Heard this evening. Justin and I allege that Councilor Donna Charles and Catherine Rodriguez violated Section 3.09E of the Leon Valley Charter when they released attorney-client privilege communication, and the attorney-client privilege had not been waived by an affirmative vote of 2/3 of the City Council. Ms. Charles released multiple attorney-client privilege communications to the public on March the 9th, 2020 at the Ethics Review Board meeting, which is a public meeting held pursuant to the Open Meetings Act. See Exhibit A. The video of this meeting was later posted on the Leon Valley YouTube channel. Ms. Charles knew or should have known that the released information was privileged, especially since she herself was asserting that it was privileged while accusing the mayor of unlawfully releasing the same information. On or about September 3rd, 2019, Dr. Rodriguez, in her official capacity as counselor, placed two requested copies of email communications sent or received by current and former city councilors. See Exhibit B. According to the city secretary, Dr. Rodriguez obtained a copy of the requested information on a USB drive. However, it appears that Dr. Rodriguez failed to maintain the confidentiality of the information requested in her official capacity, either directly or indirectly releasing the privileged information. As a custodian of the information, Dr. Rodriguez failed to maintain confidentiality of the information. On March 12, 2020, the Ethics Review Board issued a determination that Mayor Riley violated the city charter when she released the same pages also released by Ms. Charles and Dr. Rodriguez. The Ethics Review Board concluded that the invoices, quote, did in fact contain privileged and confidential information, see Exhibit C. On June 23, 2020, the city requested a decision from the Attorney General of Texas on whether it had to release the attorney billing invoices released by Ms. Charles and Dr. Rodriguez. The city said the documents contain attorney-client privilege information such as attorney and client negotiations, attorney-city manager communication, and attorney billing invoices. See Exhibit D. On July 14, 2020, the Attorney General found that the city had, quote, demonstrated the applicability of the attorney-client privilege to some of the information at issue. See Exhibit E. On August 3, 2020, the city released redacted versions of the privileged invoices released by Ms. Charles and Dr. Rodriguez. Each of 9 pages unlawfully disclosed by Ms. Charles and Dr. Rodriguez contained privileged information that was redacted. See Exhibit F, which contains the redacted versions of the pages in Exhibit A. I note that although Ms. Charles' violation may seem similar to the violation committed by the mayor, okay, we'll end there, and if we have time, we'll read it at the last.
Can I ask a question?
On this one?
Yes.
Yes, okay, I don't, yes,
The
go ahead.
first part of that you said was they filed an ethics complaint?
Justin and I submitted the following ethics violation complaint.
Okay.
I don't.
Then, that being said, you realize that you just committed a charter violation as well as an ethics violation by reading a complaint. It's an ethics complaint against me, which are supposed to be confidential.
Okay. All right, this is let's just continue to get everybody. I just was reading the letter to the editor, or a letter to the citizens, so anyway.
I understand that, Mayor, but
You
it
know what
clearly
I'm saying?
says
Okay.
ethics complaint.
Gotcha. I didn't. All right, here's the last one. Mayor Riley, this came in today. As I watched the last council meeting, I was astounded that Mr. Richard Blackmore was allowed to continue with his disruptive behavior. I believe as you gavelled the meeting to order, your first order was that everyone was to be treated with respect and dignity. This, I assume, includes the council members as well as anyone attending the meeting. As Mr. Blackmore continued with his tirade, he openly made an absolute threat toward Will Bradshaw. Why does he have such hatred for him? Is it because Will continued to represent the citizens of Leon Valley as he promised to do so when he campaigned? It is obviously apparent that if anything goes against the police chief or the city manager, Mr. Blackmore becomes enraged and continues to act in uncivil ways against Mr. Bradshaw as he addresses him. As he continued his threat last week, I heard a threat concerning Mr. Blackmore's wife. Has Will Bradshaw ever threatened to harm Mrs. Blackmore or any hair on her head? Quote, I am a neighbor of Will Bradshaw, and I can openly state that he is one of the smartest and kindest men I have ever met, a fine Christian man too. I do not believe Mr. Bradshaw would ever threaten or in any way harm Mrs. Blackmore. What reason would he have to do that? Why was he threatened against harming her? Actually, has Mr. Bradshaw threatened Mr. Blackmore? Is this threatening action going to be allowed at future city council meetings? I realize that Mr. Blackmore serves several committees for Leon Valley. Citizen volunteering is absolutely necessary. However, serving on those committees does not give him a right to act in the manner that I observed at the last council meeting. His threats for Mr. Bradshaw or any other citizen in attendance should not be allowed. Again, you said at the beginning of the meeting, and he should have been removed from the meeting at once. If he ever does this again, then he should be banned from any future meetings. And this is from Jackie Conrad, Monte Robles Park. Okay, so that is it for citizens to be heard at right now. Let's go ahead and look at the consent agenda. 3.1 to 3.7. And just due to the hour, I know we're not going to get to the whole agenda. I would like to pull 3.7 for the next meeting, which is the annual or the monthly financial statement to be presented next city council meeting, because I don't think we're going to have time for that. But if anybody wants to make a motion or anyone else wants to pull something for discussion tonight.
Mayor, I didn't understand what you said, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. On the consent agenda, I was wanting to know if there was anyone that wanted to pull anything for discussion. And I asked that agenda 3.7 be pulled to the next meeting, September 1st, to be discussed, to be presented.
Because I have it visible.
Presentation of the monthly financial report ending July 31st. And that was the one that I'd like
I
pulled.
thought you agreed to let it go because we've been doing the budget.
Well, actually, the budget is only adopting the tax rate tonight, and it's not actually going into the budget. And after I read that, then I thought, I'd like to actually discuss it, but not tonight because it's late, but to the next meeting.
Mayor,
Is what I'd like.
if I may, just refresh your memory, what you agreed to was to put it in the city manager's report, and it's in there.
Right, I understand, but I don't think we're gonna get there
Okay,
tonight.
just
That's
wanted
what
you
I'm
to know
saying.
what you agreed
Okay,
to.
if we
Okay,
don't,
no
yeah, I
problem.
understood that, but I don't think we're gonna get there. So I just wanna preserve that. If we do, great. And if we don't, well, then I have it preserved for the next meeting. That was my main concern, is to communicate the financial status of our city. That's our main goal as councilors. Yes, Councilor Rodriguez.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept, 3.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 as presented.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Councilor Councilor Rodriguez, and a second by Councilor Hody. I didn't know who had said that online, I'm sorry. To approve consent agenda items 3.1 to 3.6 as presented. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion does carry. And then, again, depending upon tonight, we'll either move the presentation to the next meeting, or if we get to Ms. Kinsler's report, we can get her to report on that. Thank you. Let's take presentation number 4.1, and then Vicki Wallace has notified me that we must address 6.1, and so I'd like to take that one after the presentation, and then depending on what you wanted as well, Councilor Rodriguez. So, agenda item number 4, presentation, discussion, and possible action on the Soapbox Derby event. And we have Maribel Mendoza, our special events coordinator this evening. Welcome.
Good evening to council.
Yes.
So the purpose of this presentation is to present the planning details of the Soapbox Derby. So just a quick event recap for last year's Soapbox Derby. Our in-kind sponsors valued at around $27,540, and that consists of our announcer, Billy Ward. He volunteered his time. The trailer, he allowed us to carry the cars in, to store them, porta potties from United Rental, CPS Energy, advertisement and banners, so forth and so on. So we have a couple of our in-kind sponsors. HEB gave gift cards to purchase some of the kids' snacks and beverages while they were up there waiting for their turn. Our monetary sponsors equal to $21,580, and our expenditures $24,945. So the only expenditure we wouldn't have this year if City Council decides to host the Soapbox Derby again would be the track setup and the staging, because we do have that from last year. So our event planning for last year, it took about 4 to 5 months. So usually when I wrap up the main details for July 4th, which is around May, I begin coordinating the Soapbox Derby. So it takes about 4 to 5 months. We advertise for the drivers, and we do speak with our local teachers and schools to try to help advertise for the drivers in our local area. We have 24 drivers and 24 cars total last year. We had 4 sessions. I'm going to speak on the 8 sessions. 4 sessions that we had last year, which is about 4 days for driver license testing. And what that consists of is we meet as a fire department, and we teach the kids how to steer left and right and how to brake, to make sure that they know the logistics and the details of the car and what it takes. After that, then they must practice at least 3 days with the coordinators. And we practice here on the actual track, which would be Evers Road. So here we make sure that they get the idea of what the track will look like. And this also tells us whether or not they're ready to drive. Because sometimes they're great at the fire department, trying to do their driver's test, and as soon as they get on every road, they say, I don't want to do this, Mom. We're going to back off. So that's really a main part to make sure they know what they're getting themselves into. And that took last year about 3 Sundays, and we had to close the road down for about an hour on Sunday mornings, around 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. Less busier traffic-wise on Evers Road. We also repaired the cars. It took about 50 days within a 4 to 5 month span. So we sometimes met with the volunteers 3 to 4 days a week. It just really depends on their schedule and what needs to be done. That also consisted of repairing or adding new graphics from last year. We did have to repair a couple of the cars' graphics, and some of them did hit the corners of the road, the edges, and the curbs. And we will obviously reserve the fencing, the porta potties, cone, and signage, and we seek sponsorship. So what event planning would look like during these times. So I propose that this would take around 5 to 6 months versus the 4 to 5. Advertising for drivers might be a little bit more difficult because we do have a lot of virtual learners, and coordinating with the schools. Haven't reached out to them just yet, but I know they're under a lot of pressure being that they have to do virtual right now, so definitely be a little more time for advertising for our drivers. We now have 27 cars total versus 24. I know we wanted to increase our cars by 8, but we haven't yet. I know we have 27. We should increase it by 4 if City Council decides to host it and to increase the cars. 16 of those 27 cars that we have belong to the city, either by donation or sponsorship. Contacted the businesses that were there last year. 22 of them said yes, they're on board. They're willing to have their cars back in the Derby. 1 said no, and 4 were undecided. They're kind of taking it month by month during this pandemic and trying to figure out whether or not they want to put their car back in the Derby. So the driver's license test wouldn't take 4 sessions, would take 8, especially if we're still under that restriction where we can't have more than 10 people. We definitely want to space out those driver tests for the kids and the parents that are there. The practice days will still take 3 days for the coordinators, but we just have to extend it to 6 Sundays versus 3, just to separate all the drivers and the parents that are there with the kids. Repairs and car maintenance, increased it to 70 days. Again, we have more cars this year, and we're just not sure what the circumstances are with the cars, and it has a lot to do with repairing them. So we ordered the parts from Akron, Ohio, which is where they host the big tournament. They actually officially canceled their race, and their team is running on a skeleton crew. So we're just afraid of ordering the parts, might not get here on time for the race, or might take a little bit longer to arrive depending on when City Council decides to host the race. So we still have to reserve the fencing, the porta potties, cones, and signage. That hasn't gone away. Even if we decide to go with, City Council decides to do virtually, we still have to have all of those vendors. And I can definitely speak to them to see if we can have some type of clause in the contract where whether or not we decide to have it, we have a money refund or anything that City Council chooses. And also another new thing, we would have to disinfect porta potties after every usage because they would have to be out there for the kids, being that the restrooms aren't so close to where they're at on top of Evers. And seeking sponsorship. So I know a lot of businesses are currently hurting. So seeking sponsorship might be a little more difficult, but we can definitely try to see what we can do with that. So recommendations, cancel the event for fall and begin working on holding the soapbox derby in early 2021. We can cancel the event and keep 2021 fall, so by next October, or anything City Council decides to do.
Okay, very good. So before I open it up for questions from the council, let me see if there's any comments, questions from our citizens and visitors who are in the chambers on what we should do with the soapbox derby this year. Yes, Mr. Bowl, if you'll come forward. You are recognized and you have up to 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Mayor Council. I think that was a lot of detail that goes into the soapbox derby, and it was something I had silently feared through the course of the last couple of months when this has all been discussed, and which prompted my continuous and over time growing insistence that you no longer sit on your hands and make a final decision on to simply cancel the soapbox derby this year. Obviously, in regards to the COVID-19, there's a lot of wheels that go into this motion. Money that should or shouldn't be spent and or wasted. I thank Ms. Mendoza for her presentation, and I do think that we should cancel until next October, with a caveat that maybe if things miraculously get down to zero, and I mean next to zero, where there's no fear of a relapse in our overall condition as a city and state, that perhaps we have it in the fall. But I think we should look to the future, which is October, knowing that we can prepare for the worst and then hope for the best at that point. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else in the chambers want to add a comment on this or a question on this agenda item? Yes. Mr. Fuller.
Justin Pullen, Fort Wayne County. Although I don't live here, Mayor, I'd be happy to look into sponsorship of this event. I wish someone on the city staff or administration would maybe reach out to me one day about how to, conduct more business in the city instead of just pushing on for people away. But I really would encourage the city to hold this event just as rapidly as possible, with a caveat where it can be properly organized, and part of that organization is marketing and letting people know that it is even existing. I think for getting people back to normal, the fall would be great. If it can't happen, then maybe the summer would be a good time, a time when people are able to do it, would like to come out on a nice day. Maybe another time when the weather's right, but really just as fast as possible. I would say it should be done, and I would be happy to look into what I could do to help out with this event. Thank you, Mayor, Council.
Anyone else in the chambers? All right, so seeing no one else, then I'll move to the counselors. Do you have any questions for Maribel Mendoza? Maribel, if you come back to the podium, please. And Mr. Bradshaw, did you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Mendoza, for your presentation. And I saw that you said Akron, Ohio canceled their event for the year. Have you talked to any other cities that do soapbox derbies? You know if anybody else has canceled their event for the year as well?
I haven't spoken to any cities that do the soapbox derby. I've tried to contact Akron to see which cities are registered for the local, and I haven't been able to get in contact with them.
Okay. What about the sponsors of the event? I mean, it sounds like you talked to some of them. Are they in favor of having the event, or do they want to postpone it, or do you get a general feeling from that?
So a lot of the sponsors I spoke to are our in-kind sponsors. Definitely they were all for, which is a lot of the businesses that have cars, but I haven't spoken to a lot of the monetary ones. They're really undecided on what they want to do. They're taking this month by month to see how this turns out.
Okay. So I did speak to a citizen, Chris Moreno, who was very involved with the soapbox derby. Or I reached out to him, and he said he hasn't really done any research to see what other cities are doing as far as safety and social distancing because of COVID. It sounds like maybe I'm misinterpreting, but they're not ready yet. So I personally would be in favor to postpone it till the spring, March or April. I think would be a good time to, and of course, it's also good to change depending on how things are, but I think that's we should.
Okay. Anyone else? Councilor Rodriguez, do you have a thought on what you'd like to see for the soapbox derby?
As much as I do enjoy that event, I think for safety reasons, for the safety of the kids, and the participants, the people going to be involved, that, like Mr. Bradshaw saying, that we postpone it until the spring or thereafter.
All right. Councilor Hody? No? Councilor Alcacer, do you have a comment on the soapbox derby?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. I have a couple of questions for Maribel. It seems to me that the changes from previously are kind of to the extreme? Is that just based on, COVID, or is plus a few extra cars, or? Cause that could be shortened if things get much better, by springtime, could it not?
That's correct, ma'am. It's a little bit of both. It's due to COVID and the addition of cars that we have.
Okay, like the thing, the repair, maintenance and repair, that's talking about, 70 days for repairs is a lot of time. Is
So-
that talking after you have the preliminary training, or, they should be in good condition right now, are they not?
No, ma'am. So the 70 days includes the time we order the parts and when they arrive, which are concerned because since Akron, Ohio, where we order the parts from the headquarters.
I'm
is so
sorry,
close.
I can't understand anything you're saying. It's all coming through garbled.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but I can't, now I can, that was clear.
Okay, perfect. So the 70 days, it is an extreme, but it also includes the time to order the parts that we need for the cars. And right now, since we ordered from headquarters, Akron, Ohio, they are running on a skeleton crew. So we're just trying to make a determination, how long we get those parts and whether it's a delay time like everything else that is coming in. So it could be definitely shortened time. It might not be the 70 days, but I'm really preparing for the worst in this case. In case this does stay the same, or if it does get better, we can obviously eliminate some of those days. But the 70 days is really for the parts to come in. We do have a couple of cars that need new graphics. If there is new sponsorship, we also need to rewrap those cars. And the businesses that do wrap those cars, again, there's about a 3 to 4 week lead time for that. So that's where the 70 days kind of comes all together.
Okay, I still didn't understand a lot, but I got the gist of it. And I do favor canceling it. I kind of thought we had canceled it already, but canceling October and doing March or April, like I agree with Mr. Bradshaw on that. Those are two of our nicest months, and it would be perfect if we could have it. The kids and everybody love it, and it's sad if the drivers get too big and lose out a year because we can't have it. Those from the fall might be able to carry in to the spring because they might not get too big. But that's my opinion. Thanks.
Counselor Charles.
I agree with that. We need to cancel for the fall this year and plan for spring next year, or depending on how that goes, maybe even waiting until fall next year.
Okay. Counselor Hody, did you have anything to add?
No, ditto
Okay.
on that.
All right.
Yeah, we definitely need to, see, that's what I don't want to do is do a lot of work for the spring, hoping that it's
Right.
going to be, available. If it gets to whatever that cutoff point is decided, I think we should pretty much say a year from this fall.
Okay. Maribel, when do we have, okay, I know everybody, because we did not formally cancel it last meeting, we looked at a virtual meeting, but that still takes too much time and effort and we don't have enough time. But if we were to hold it in the spring, again, I don't know because we don't know where COVID's gonna be, we don't know if we're gonna have a vaccine, we don't know if we're gonna have a spike. If we were to hold it like in, say, April or May, 5 months back would be January. Could we revisit in January or December and then make that decision if it could be spring, or if not, fall? What do y'all think about that? Because it's hard to determine where we're gonna be on this virus.
Right. So if council decides to have it between April and May, I will have to start planning this late October, early November to
okay.
make sure that I have enough lead time, because again, our kids do go back on winter break in December, so trying to grab the drivers to make sure that we have enough drivers since we did increase it. If we decide to have it between February and March, I would have to start it within the next 30 days. just to give me enough time to be unaffected, to be unknown really with their current time, so. It's just,
I think I heard the council say spring, you know, so to me that, I heard March, I heard April.
so then by the end of October, early November, I would have to really start getting through the planning of the soapbox derby.
So, Councilor Bradshaw, I was wondering, you want to just bring it back at that
So,
time, or?
well, I'd like to make a motion to postpone it till spring and then revisit in October, November to see what the, if that, you know, we give Maribel the go ahead at that point.
Okay.
Put it back on the agenda.
I'll second him.
All right, we have a motion by Councilor Bradshaw and a second by Councilor Rodriguez to postpone the fall soapbox derby event, and reschedule in the spring if possible. Oh, I'm sorry, I have a counselor that wants to speak. Okay, let me go ahead and make the motion and go further discussion. And bring it back in, did you say October? Back on the agenda to
First meeting
see,
in October.
see if we're able to reschedule it based on where the COVID virus is. Okay, any further discussion? There is somebody that would like to speak. Is that Councilor Alcacer?
Yeah, I was
Council-
going to vote, but I don't think we need to bring it back by October. I think November, or, by, you know, some point in November, we'll know how the flu-COVID combination is going. I think October's too early.
Okay, Ms. Mendoza had said October here in Chambers, and that's why I was going on her recommendation, but she's shaking her head saying November's fine. So we'll bring it back in November. We'll change that. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion does carry. Thank you so much for all your efforts. Do appreciate it. So, if it's amenable to the council, we'll just move to agenda 6.1 since Vicki is saying we must. Vicki, do we need to do 6.1 and 6.2?
No,
No, but 6.1 we have to do tonight, right? You said we have to do that one because of the way the budget schedule is. So
Right.
let's take that one now, so we'll relieve the pressure, and then we'll decide what we're gonna take next.
Yeah, because what
Okay.
happens on the first is that we've done all the publications, we're gonna come back and that's the evening we're gonna vote on. Since we're required to read, I have to bring it now, and the second will be.
Certainly, I understand that. Okay, so we are now moving to we're skipping 5.1 ordinance, and we'll be back to that, and going to 6.1 regular agenda. Ms. Posley, if you'll please read that ordinance.
An ordinance establishing and adopting for the purpose of taxation for the calendar year 2020 and fiscal year 2021, levying a tax of 0.472162 for maintenance and operations and 0.063742 for interest and sinking fund for a total tax rate of 0.535904 on all properties subject to taxation and situated in the city of Leon Valley, Texas, on the first day of January 2020, establishing the rate of said levy, determining due date, delinquent date, interest rate, and delinquencies, and for penalties and delinquencies, and determining and enacting other matters pertinent, necessary, and incident to the subject, and providing for savings costs.
Okay, thank you, and welcome, Ms. Wallace. We're glad you're here.
Smile behind.
I know. No, you smile with your eyes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so if you remember at the budget workshop we had on the 8th, we went over, did what the tax rate we were proposing. And so basically, we are proposing, and this is the no new revenue, which used to be the effective tax rate, 0.535904, which the breakdown would be maintenance operation would be 0.476216, and interest would be 0.063742, and then, of course, if we don't exceed the no new revenue, or what is now called the voter approval, which used to be the rollback rate, we just go on and we post the notice of the meeting to vote on it, and we adopt it. And no public hearing is required.
Okay, so it's no new revenue equals effective tax rate. That's new this year.
Yes.
And that means that we are basically keeping the same dollars that we had last year's budget to this year's budget, correct? So then you said the next one is voter approval. And what is that percentage?
It used to be the rollback tax rate.
That used to be 8%, but we had a change.
3.5.
It's 3.5.
So to kind of
okay.
give you an example, last year, our rollback rate was 0.582107. This year, our calculated voter approval
tax rate is 0.549808. It's quite a drop from when we were at 8%.
Right. So we cannot ask the voters, we can't go within our budget more than 3.5% without going to the vote of the people. And that's new. That was legislative change two years ago, not this year, but last year. Okay, great, thank you.
And so on this slide, you actually, I gave the breakdown what our tax rate for 2019 adopted, and then what the tax rate for the tax year of 2020 to propose. And you can see the difference for the M&O is 0.003215. For the INS, it's 0.004471. And the thing that affects that is if we have excess collections. So basically, they certified last year, we only had 26,000, and this year they're certifying 47,000. So that's why you see that debt rate going down, because we have to adopt by law whatever they calculate that rate to be. So if they come in and say that we had excess collections, then they change the rate and they roll it back down. So that's why that happened. So it's actually a total reduction of 0.007686.
Yeah, okay.
And so the next meeting would be the meeting to vote on the tax rate, which would be September 1st, 2020. And then what will happen is we'll go in and have the budget public hearing. We'll adopt the budget, ratify the budget, then we'll adopt the tax rate.
Okay, all right, very good. So are there, and this is the first read,
Yes,
so we
ma'am.
don't vote tonight, but we will vote at the next meeting. But let me again ask if there's any questions from our citizens and visitors in the chambers this evening on the tax rate and why it went up and down or whatever. I'm so used to effective tax rate, now it's no new revenue. Oh, it's so different, yeah. Yes, so we do have some citizens who would like to speak. If you'll come forth and just state your name and where you live at the podium, and you have up to 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
You said questions, but we can have comments also.
Oh, yes, the questions or comments, you bet, either way.
Okay, so Josh Stevens from Forest Oaks. So I was reviewing this and I wanted to do a little bit of a comparison. And so I think the citizens, this looks fine and dandy, a little bit less than, our rates a little lower than last year. But we have a big spending problem in Leon Valley right now. The budget is balanced, but like what we didn't tell, what wasn't pointed out in the whole budgeting of the balancing of the budget is the fact that we balanced that budget by using the entire account for our street maintenance budget. And so historically, the last several years, we've had anywhere from 1.2 to $1.8 million sitting in our account at the beginning of the year that we can use for street maintenance. And usually we supplement with a little bit of general fund for some street maintenance projects. Well, now we have zero. And so what we've budgeted for street maintenance is the $600,000 that we're expecting as the tax that's allocated for street maintenance. So I find that very concerning. And I think it goes down to the root cause is the fact that we have a big spending problem right now in Leon Valley. Not only, unlike other cities, we have red light camera revenue that helps us balance the budget as well. In some circumstances, we can use it for law enforcement expenses and some types of improvements and stuff. But I'm very concerned because our tax rate is so high compared to other cities. And I don't think the Leon Valley residents really know that. So I wanted to do a couple of comparisons. So our tax rate of what you see on the screen here, which is 0.5359 actually. I guess it was the slide before. This tax rate is 14% higher than the city of Bernie, 37% higher than the municipal tax rate in Alamo Heights, 19% higher than the tax rate in Cibolo, 22% higher than Live Oak, 85% higher than Chavano Park residents, 168% higher than the tax that Selma residents pay, 133% higher than Fredericksburg, 53% higher than Terrell Hills, 53% higher than Helotes, 62% higher than Fair Oaks Ranch, 257% higher than Hill Country Village, 25% higher than Alamos Park. And I'm not okay with that. I don't know if you guys are, but I think that, the citizens should be aware that our tax rate in our city is much higher than the average in this area of Texas. And I think it's a cause for concern. Obviously, it's really a hard problem to fix because you have to, if you're going to decrease the tax rate and decrease your revenue, you have to decrease the spending as well. And I think that's what one of our biggest problems is in terms of the city council, is the fact that we continue spending so much money on silly, ridiculous things like litigation. And I think we're about to go to the 312 item. Well, you know, sure as hell, Will Bradshaw's gonna file a lawsuit against the city as soon as that happens. Like, I mean, just use your common sense, really.
Thank you. All right. Yes, Mr. Bowles, you're next. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Again, I'd like to
And
thank,
this is Evan Bowles and.
yeah, Evan Bowl and
Yeah,
Forrest.
Forrest.
Thank you, sorry. Every time you introduce me,
Well, I just.
by this point, I'm completely overhead.
I know. We know you are.
I'd like to thank Vicki for this presentation. When I first heard about it over the course of the last several budget presentations and the proposed overall budgets that we went through, it was discussed that our tax rate essentially was going to go down in a sort, and it confused me as to why or how that might be, but you know, at the end of it all, it didn't matter because all I heard was lower taxes that we'd essentially be paying. And given my time here listening to all of these budget proposals and how we have been spending our money, it shouldn't really make a difference what's going on in Chavano Park or in Hill Country Village. Their populations are different. Their reasons for their operations are different, and their needs are different than ours. It seems like we've been doing a relatively decent job at spending, and yes, I would agree, egregious litigation spending and such, and having to balance the budget on a surplus of unused street fair funds. That is what would concern me. Not so much the wasteful spending or the lower tax rate or any of that. It's just that we need to be sure that when we do this, that we are ensuring that there's or not that egregious amount at the beginning of each year in any bank account for any department unless we intend to use it, because I have seen where there could be funds used and you motivate enough people to get the job done, you'll see that the funds are being used properly. But otherwise, I enjoy the fact that the tax rate is going lower.
Thank you for your efforts, because I know this is always a challenge to.
This year was a challenge because of all the new laws.
Yeah, all the new laws and the COVID and, you know, how is it impacting our budget and having to project. But, you know, I agree, it's really hard, you know, I think we have to stand independent with our city and our needs and our rate. And I can tell you that this is a really, really good rate. It used to be 58. And I always say, and usually we do get a chart, because I know I've asked in the past, what's everybody else's rates, but I've learned that, you know, everybody's got different needs. I mean, some people have a water company, some people don't, like we have one, you know, that kind of thing. So it's hard to compare, but it's coming down. And so it has been coming down over the last several years, so.
Council's been very fiscally responsible with their.
I think so. So, and would you address the street maintenance? I didn't think we were balancing the street maintenance
We are not.
fund. I think we were just using it because that's what we hadn't used it for a couple of years.
Is because we think the sales tax is gonna drop. And since that is a standalone fund, I stressed it. I put it at 10% because I don't want it sitting there because we can't dip into the fund balance because we are supposed to spend it. That's the whole, the street maintenance.
And then the ED, we moved it from a separate corporation into the general fund. So we have some flexibility there, but we do keep it directed to EDCD. So.
And at the end of the year, whatever, if their revenue exceeds their expenditures, then I have a separate reserve set up for them.
Okay.
So it's always accounted for properly. Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
40 years, I take pride in that.
Mm-hmm. There you go. All right. Any other questions, comments for Ms. Wallace on the tax rate? Okay.
I had just a comment for
Yes,
Vicki, please.
Counselor Alcacer, you're recognized. Thank you.
Ms. Wallace, thank you. Wonderful, great job, especially in this hard year. Thanks for what you do for the city.
Thank you, ma'am. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, anyone else? Then we'll move on. Okay, it is now 9 o'clock and, forward with 6.4.
Mayor,
Yes, I'm sorry.
I think we have to go back to 5.1.
Yes, 5.1, I know we need to do that as well. We have to do that, so I'm just trying, can we go ahead and start with that one? And where is Chief Salvaggio? I'm going to have to keep him on a short leash here. So he'll, and we do have some other staff members that are here as well. So let's go ahead and.
You want me to do
the
quick one, the echo one? Oh, they're
Well,
getting
I think, let's see if we could do the ordinance 5.1. He's usually just gonna give us an update. There he is. Thank you. 5.1, and we have, the update on the local ordinance. And Ms. Pasley, if you'll please read that.
An ordinance of the City
Good evening,
Council.
Chief. I'm sorry? I just wanted to say good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, thank you.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Leon Valley, Texas, extending a declaration of local disaster, establishing rules and regulations for the duration, repealing all penalties for violation.
Physical facilities of the City of Leon Valley were ordered closed to the public for in-person business. That included all those that are there. The parks, except the restroom, walking and running trails, and the community garden remain open. Our curbside service continues at the library, starting June 22nd. It's been very successful, and we do want that to continue. And I'll go back to, real quick on this, Melinda just wanted me to point out on the pools that she's had a conversation with the vendor, and the vendor said at this point, the only thing that he could do is actually weekends in September, and that's even depending on if he can get the people hired. She just wanted me to point that out. Just a reminder on the COVID numbers, or see what we're looking at. June 8th is when really things started picking up, and as you can see, from June 8th, July to August 8th, where we're just a week ago, a little over a week ago, 10 days ago, and the numbers are even higher than that now, exponentially higher. We're in the 600s in the deaths, and the 60-something thousand, I believe. I can't remember exactly in Bear County at this point. So there's discrepancy in the numbers. I don't want to go down that road, but the numbers have been jumping in a month's time frame exponentially. And so they have come down just a little bit lately, so there's some good news in that aspect of it, but it's not reflecting yet in these numbers that we're seeing here. In the future,